Pets Add Life, your guide to the latest in pet trends, products, and the joy of the human-animal bond, with Kristen Levine and Chris Bonifati, powered by the American Pet Products Association and Dog TV.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the PAL podcast. I am Chris Bonifati, joined as always by the thoughtful and tenacious Kristen Levine. Kristen, how we doing today?
I'm doing great today. It's almost spring. It's almost official.
So
spring.
close. So close. I've got a nice, little flowery golf polo on because I was feeling it. It was one of those days today that it was sunny but still completely freezing.
Right.
But we're close.
It's just around the corner.
We're right there, which means my anxiety is spiking because we're close to global. Be on the lookout for some special episodes coming up down the line here. But we're not going to get too into that because we still have a few to go. And we're going to be bringing you two stories, two great guests, two awesome products, and then we're going to be answering two questions because that's just what we do.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that's our job. We do our jobs in a satisfactory way, we hope. I'll know if you turn that dial, I'll know. So just remember that as you're listening to this intro. We know.
I was just going to say, do we have performance reviews on our performance? Or is that just,
they're in the comments of Instagram.
Yeah.
Those are our performance reviews. It's good for your mental health to not read those. But hey, if you have something nice to say, get in the comments. Balance out the usual internet trolls and toxicity. But hey, we're going to do a great show. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So without further ado,
start off with stories.
Yeah, stories it is. Good call,
time.
Kristen. To story time. Story time. That's the jingle, right? Story time. It's time to hear another story time.
Are you making that up, or is that supposed to be something I recognize?
No, I think that was off the cuff. But let's play the real jingle now.
All right, let's do it.
Kristen and Chris present Story Time.
All right, Kristen, I'm going to let you go first here. What's your story for us this week?
Okay, I have a story about some K-9 Einsteins. This is really interesting. We all think that our dogs are special and smart and the best, of course. But researchers have documented that there are some rare dogs that have a really remarkable talent, and that is that they can learn hundreds of toy names. And now this research was just published in Scientific Reports by the Family Dog Project at Elite University in Budapest. So these are some key findings from the research. They identified 41 gifted dogs across 9 different countries. And these dogs can learn anywhere from, and remember the names of anywhere from, on average, 29 toy names. But over half of these dogs, and I'll let you guess what breed they were, over half of these dogs could learn more than 100 toy names. So you want to guess what the breed was that knew most the 100 toy names?
I have 2 guesses, and I'm going to be wrong because every time you have me guess, I get it just so wrong on this show. But my 2 guesses would be either Border Collie or Poodle.
Very good. Border Collie. 56%. I know. Yeah, they are. They really are. However, the other 44% will definitely surprise you. It was very surprising to me. They're Pomeranians. What?
Oh, wow.
Pekingese. Okay. Shih Tzus. Come on. That can't be right. I've known many Shih Tzus and mixed breeds. So that's pretty impressive. And what makes this study really special is it's the first large scale study of this particular ability, because the previous research only looked at a couple of dogs. So it proves it's just a genuine talent. It's not a coincidence. And I think some of the surprising things were that the owners of these dogs didn't actively teach the dogs the toy names. They just said, go get your ducky. And the dog knew what ducky was. Also, the dogs learned naturally during normal playtime. The owner's training experience did not matter. They could have zero training experience, or maybe they had a little bit. And the ability seemed to be spontaneous in these gifted dogs. So this research team is still looking for more of these gifted word learners. So if you're listening and you have a dog that you think might be able to compete with these other genius dogs, you can check them out at Genius Dog Challenge. Just Google Genius Dog Challenge, because they are looking for more genius dogs.
Somewhere out there is a listener whose border collie is currently reading the newspaper by the fireplace.
Right, doing the crossword puzzle.
The spotlight has shined on them. It's their time.
That's right.
But that's great. Yeah, it's one of those things where you feel like your dog. It's like you feel like your dog knows words, but you're like, there's no way, right? But I guess there is, right? I guess there is.
Yeah. Well, what's your story?
I've got a story about a dog who's not necessarily smart, but certainly tenacious. So this is a story out of New Orleans that I thought was just so funny. And if you're from the New Orleans area, you may have heard of Scrim, who is a 17-pound mutt who's become a bit of a folk hero. And I'm going to spoil the ending. The dog has been returned because I don't like to leave people, in bated breath thinking something happened to the dog. But this dog escaped home. It's a rescue dog that escaped home and has successfully evaded capture for something like 2 or 3 months. And it became a little bit of a celebrity. Yeah, there were volunteers out there, and they'd constantly find this dog. But he was just so tenacious and squirrely. He always managed to get away. He survived. I don't mean survived, but he escaped many attempts from animal control, trained professionals. He survived a hurricane and blizzard conditions. He moved across 57 square miles, and he was ultimately captured in a cat trap, which is so ironic.
No way.
He was captured in a cat trap. Finally, the fugitive has been brought to justice. And by justice, he has been returned home to his owner, who has said she will do a much better job in locking the doors. They got a smart collar with like the AirTag tracker now.
Good.
So if it ever happens again, it'll be much easier to return Scrim home. And Scrim was incredibly elated to be back home. The owner also said, maybe I'll try longer walks during the day to quell his adventurous spirit.
Yeah,
so welcome home.
I think that story says more about the professional animal control people than
I think they were holding back a bit. I think there's a difference between trying to get a stray dog and somebody's dog. Yeah. I think everybody was well aware that this dog meant no harm. And they were trying to use the most gentle means possible.
Yeah.
But I want a movie. I want a movie about Scrim's little adventure. I want him to meet a squirrel, maybe voiced by Steve Carell or something, and they sort of go around New Orleans. They get caught in like a French Quarter parade and join in, right? Something like that. I could see it playing.
They come home wearing beads.
Yeah, they come home wearing beads with their little hurricane cups. But welcome home, Scrim.
Beyond the Leash, exploring the untold stories of pet passion and professionalism.
All right, joining us today is Jason Johnson, the founder and CEO of Project K-9 Hero. He's a dedicated advocate for retired police canines and military working dogs. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Jason has worked as a canine handler, a trainer, an instructor with agencies including the Department of Homeland Security, ATF, and the U.S. Department of State in Iraq and Afghanistan. His mission is to honor these heroic animals by providing them with medical care, food, and end-of-duty services after their retirement. Now, through Project K-9 Hero, Jason has not only raised awareness about the challenges that are faced by these retired canines, but also created a 177-acre rehabilitation and rehoming facility in Tennessee. That is so cool. He's also authored children's books inspired by his K-9 partner Flash, and works with Congress to pass the K-9 Hero Act. Awesome. So without further ado, let's introduce Jason. Hi, Jason. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
And thank you for your service. Wow, you've done a lot in your 2-decade career. Let's just start off with this question.
Actually, it's my 31st year. So
is it really?
3 decades
wow.
now.
Okay. Well, we got to give credit for all those for the 30.
Let's spend that 3 decades, people.
3 decades. So retired canines can often face significant challenges, particularly with medical costs and rehoming. Can you share some of the most common issues these heroes are facing after retirement? Because I don't think
Sure.
the general pet-loving public knows about this.
No, a lot of them don't, and nor do our leaders or our elected officials. But what a lot of people don't understand is not every retired hero has a home to go to after their service. Things do happen. In the United States military, dogs that might have PTSD, aggression issues, they get on a list that's non-adoptable to the general public. If the prior handler can't take it, or another handler, it can be euthanized after its service at no really fault of its own. Stuff that we trained it to do, things that we taught it to do, and behaviors that we asked of it throughout its career. And you just can't speak to the dog and ask them to change that type of behavior after 10 years or so. And we've had dogs come here like military working dog Rosso, who was going to be euthanized, military working dog Black. And we work closely with the Adoption Center down at Lackland Air Force Base to be a trusted resource as a nonprofit, that when these dogs do come up in these positions, it's not every day, but it does happen, that we're here to help take them in and have a home right here, like you said, at our 177-acre rehabilitation rehoming facility in Tennessee. Now, the same can be with police canines. Most police canines, I'll tell you, over 90% will stay with their handler. I was a former police canine handler as well. But things happen. Doesn't get along with the family, bit a child, aggression issues toward the handler, gets itself in a situation that it can no longer stay there or no one else can take it. So again, we're a trusted resource for those state, local, and federal police agencies. And we're 100% booked up here. We have a temporary kennels, temporary office. We have a capital campaign that's helping build our permanent rehabilitation rehoming center, which will probably be the most comprehensive in the entire world. We'll be able to house about 25 heroes at that time that we work one-on-one with 24/7, learning their triggers and removing them from their lives so they can get back out into society, as well as the veterinarian, the exercise piece, and just the mental health piece to make sure that, the way we're going about it is a way they understand. Yeah. And in a way that they can be conducive to getting back out there and living the retirement that they so rightfully deserve.
Yeah, that's some amazing work there, Jason. But you're also working with Congress to pass the K-9 Hero Act. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this legislation and how it will benefit retired police canines and military working dogs?
Yeah, exactly. So in 2019 and 2020, we actually had it on the House floors, HR 5081, under Congressman Ron Wright. And during COVID, Congressman Wright passed away from lung cancer. And when your congressman who introduced it passed away, your bill kind of passes away with it. And you need a new form of legislature, whether it be in the House or Senate, to push that forward. I've rewritten it. I've tried to make it better. But basically, we're working today. I'll be in Congress in 2 weeks, speaking with a few offices, looking for that right representative to help me get it back out there so I can get to a vote. But it's to take federal funding and help these retired heroes with their medical care. I'm a disabled veteran. We get VA benefits. These heroes serve our country, whether it be in the military or the federal service, and they have no benefits. They are discarded after their retirement. Whoever adopts them, whether it be me, you, or anyone else listening, the responsibility is 100% on them. That's for all medical care. And that could be from in the line of duty injuries. That could have been from an explosion in Iraq during the war. That could have been many things that have caused them to have problems. But there's nothing in place. So I'm trying to change that. And I strongly feel that we can use some of that money through nonprofits like Project K-9 Hero to help one-on-one pay those bills. Because right now we have to raise it through public funding, donations. And we do a great job of donations here. But as a former government employee, as a former U.S. Army military police officer, and as a former canine handler, I feel we, as the American government, owe it to them. And I'm going to fight the rest of my life to see that happens.
Wow. I'm so glad we had you on the show today because I guess I never really thought about the fact or knew that there was no federal funding for these dogs after they retire. That's really interesting. Um, so what is the biggest challenge with these retired dogs? Is it the ability to afford the medical care and the perhaps the training or training modifications, or is it finding the actual ideal homes for them?
I think it's a combination. I think for us right now, the biggest problem is we have 30 dogs in waiting who need their life saved, and we don't have the resources here to build out our capital campaign. Many people want to donate to our organization, which has 321 dogs lifetime in it since 2016, 141 alive today, to help pay those bills because they see a specific need: cancer treatment, lymphoma, chemotherapy, leg amputation, whatever the case may be. They want to help because they see that dog in need. But what they can't see is the list of dogs that need to come here, they're going to be euthanized otherwise. And that's the reason for the capital campaign. Many people don't want to donate to help, level out the ground and bring the water in and the electricity it takes and then build the buildings. They want to see that go to a bill. And, we do a really good job raising money. When I started it in 2016, I was still in the government. I took $500 in my pocket. And today we've raised over $25 million, a number that I would
Wow.
never even conceive as being possible. This past year in 2024, we did over 5.5 million, 4.3 the year before, 4.4 the year before, all the while maintaining 90% of program services, 5% admin cost, and just 5% fundraising. So we're killing
Wow.
it in that area, right? We're doing top of the world, best in the world that I know of, based on the amount of money we're bringing in, the heroes we're helping, the stories we have, and keeping that great, program service ratio. And if people were to Google us right now on anything on the internet, Project K-9 Hero, you'll see Charity Navigator probably pop up first. We are a 100% rated charity, which is only one
Wow.
tenth of 1% of all charities in the entire world to be 100% rated. And that shows our transparency that we're doing right by the money and we're doing everything we can. So that challenge isn't as hard for me as the founder and CEO, because when we have a dog that needs medical help, people want to donate and help.
Hmm.
But we also have 30 dogs that sit in waiting and they don't have a home to go to. And I can't visually show them that as well as I can a dog
Yeah.
in an ER.
Yeah.
And we
Right.
have the property. We've already paid off the 177 acres. But I'm looking for a company that might be listening or a donor who has the ability to put their name on a building. And we have 6 buildings. We have a rehabilitation rehoming center, our national headquarters, 2 adoption cabins, our maintenance facility, and so forth. We're looking for companies who might want to put their name up there in perpetuity and sponsor a building. That way we can help those other military working dogs, because they do call me every week, and I only can take in so many dogs here. And you've probably heard of other nonprofits that may have got themselves in trouble. They had too many dogs, and maybe the standards weren't up there, and they've got neglect issues. And we don't want to get into that. I just can't take every dog that calls me because we don't have the
Hmm.
infrastructure, the resources, the personnel, or the buildings to keep them sanitized, safe, healthy, and all that. So all that has to come first before we start saying yes. So I'm hoping through the capital campaign, which all can be found on projectk9hero.org, we can find someone who really wants to help move the needle on that. It's about an $8.6 million project right now. We are raising money for it. We're doing events for it to raise that money. But I really feel the home run in the whole piece is just to find that one organization who wants to be affiliated with Project K-9 Hero and put their name up on it forever.
Yeah, that's all really great stuff. Before we let you go here, Jason, give us that website one more time where people can learn more, where they can donate to some of your causes, or maybe there's a family out there that may be willing to rehome one of those dogs. Where can they go to learn more?
Absolutely. It's projectk9hero.org, or they can follow us on social media at Project K9 Hero, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we post all the adoption availabilities on there. Everything's on our website. Down at the bottom, you'll see our annual report, 990 audits, applications for services, everything you'll need to know on how you can support this organization that is really my passion.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason,
Wonderful.
for both your
Thank you
service to
for
this country and
yes.
these dogs. I'm really happy that there's people like you out there in the world taking care of them. So thank you for raising this awareness and taking the time out of your day to talk to us about these issues.
We really appreciate it. And I say these dogs spent their entire life protecting us, so I'm going to spend the rest of mine protecting them. Thank you.
Oh, Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. What a really awesome cause. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I learned a lot. I mean, I wish I have more questions for him. So I might drive over to Tennessee.
Eye-opening stuff. Like you said, shocked to know that there's no program in place. You would think like, where's PETA on this? You know what I mean? They're always complaining about animal rights. This is like one that we can all get behind and be like, yeah, exactly. Like it just makes sense.
This is a uniting issue.
Yeah, this one is one that it makes sense. So,
but I think it's interesting. And you know what else I thought about while he was talking was they don't have the option to have foster homes because these dogs, you know, like when a lot of animal shelters, when they have too many pets in their facility, they can foster some out. But these dogs are, you know, because of their training and their background, they're not just easily fosterable. So that's another challenge they face. But anyway, I think I know I would love to support this organization, and I might even drive over to Tennessee to see this facility because it's only a few hours away from me.
Oh, wow. Well, take a lot of pictures. And joining us now is Steve Dale, one of the most influential voices in pet health and behavior, reaching millions of pet owners every single day. As a certified animal behavior consultant, he has dedicated his career to helping pet parents understand their furry companions better. You may have seen Steve on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Good Morning America, National Geographic Explorer, Animal Planet, countless other TV opportunities. He has been there. In addition to his media work, Steve serves on the board of the Human Animal Bond Association and the Every Cat Health Foundation, contributing to renowned veterinarian books such as Decoding Your Dog and Decoding Your Cat. He is absolutely laureled with awards. He is a huge personality. It is a pleasure, Steve, to have you on the show today. Welcome so much.
Well, rather than Laurel, I'm more like Hardy, I think. But that's a whole other thing. I've been eating way too much.
I believe that. I'm right there with you. So you've been a trusted voice in pet behavior and wellness for decades. But what originally inspired you to dedicating your career to educating pet owners?
Yeah, so are people really interested in this? I was an entertainment reporter back in the day. So in fact, I covered the folks like Oprah because she worked out of Chicago. I'm in Chicago. I covered entertainment for People Magazine, the Chicago Tribune, USA Today was just first beginning at that point in time. And while I loved doing that, when I went to the Tribune, and their Friday section, the weekend pull-out entertainment section at that point had begun. And they asked me to do the entertainment column. I said, can I also write about pets? And they said, about what? So I did. And any story for years and years that was on the feature side of the Tribune in Chicago. And then I began to write about pets for other folks and had the opportunity to interview real experts and therefore learn a lot. And radio, because I do radio, the radio side of it began when I was like a teenager playing disco music on the radio and a variety of other formats playing music in Chicago. But I always tried to bring in pets. Eventually worked at some talk radio stations, and 27 or so years ago, WGN Radio in Chicago said, do you want to do a pet show? And I said, yes. And it became Only Pets since then. Around that same time, I was syndicated by the Tribune to do a pet column. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. And Steve, I grew up in the Chicago area. I was there up until about 92 maybe. So I remember your column and learned a lot from you. And it's great to have you on the show today. Just as a follow-up question to Chris's question, you work very closely with veterinarians and animal behaviorists. And I'm just curious to know, what do you think pet owners, pet parents misunderstand the most about their pet's behavior?
Well, cats lead the list there. So with dogs, a new study actually recently came out, brand new. And this study revealed that we fairly are well adept at understanding something is wrong with our dog, but not so good at determining what is wrong. So we misinterpret what the dogs are telling us, even though we evolved with dogs. And I say all the time that as smart as we think we are, dogs are smarter at understanding us than we are at understanding them. Cats, however, it is a long laundry list of things that there are misconceptions about cats. There are still books that say cats are antisocial. They are not. When cats are outdoors, where do they go? They go to live with other cats. To my knowledge, government has not forced them to do this. It is done by choice for safety reasons, right? Another misconception about cats is that you need to declaw cats, and people still sometimes don't realize that when you're doing that, I want to make sure I'm not using the wrong finger here. So if you bend your finger like this and cut this off and do that with all of your fingers, that's what we're doing when we declaw cats. It's an amputation. And today we better understand more than ever before how to transition cats, even if they've been scratching in all the wrong places, wrong defined by us, not by them, that we can transition them to scratching in all the right places defined by us, and therefore ultimately defined by them. As far as what dogs and cats eat, you want to start a bar fight? Talk about diet, for dogs or cats, right? People feel so passionately about it. But especially right now at this very time, if you're feeding your cat in particular raw diet, think twice about it and check those recalls almost every day. Because of the bird flu, we are seeing so many of those. But there are so many misconceptions when it comes to diet. When it comes to behavior, you don't need to be oppressive to your dog. Motivation really does work. And by the way, you can train cats too. I don't know who's smarter, dogs, cats. At veterinary conferences, I often ask that question, or speaking to general audiences. And some people say dogs, some people say cats, some people say they're about the same. If they are in the same realm, about the same, why aren't we teaching our cats things too? Why aren't we communicating things to enhance the human-animal bond with cats? Because they can and do learn every bit as well, if not better, than dogs. Because what cats learn is that they are in charge of the household and ultimately can tell you what to do on a daily basis.
You're so right. As a cat dad, you're so right. But I want to drill down on that a little bit. You mentioned the human-animal bond, and I think a lot of people out there are wondering, how can I strengthen my bond with either my dog, but a lot of people asking about their cats too. They feel very separated from their cats. So do you have any tips on how a pet parent can strengthen that bond?
Oh, absolutely. I have about 4,000 of them, but I'll give you
Let's do 1,000 of them.
I can and I will. So for cats, I talked about training cats. If people train their cats to do something, to do anything, like come when called, that's a safety issue, first of all. So if something bad happens where you live, like the fires or the floods or all those things that have been happening all over the country, you at least have an opportunity, a chance. Now, cats are sometimes so terrified that even the most well-trained cat is not going to come when called when the house begins to burn. However, having said that, at least now you have a shot and you practice it. And I do all the time where I'm at a place and my cat is so good at it, my cat, that I will try to hide somewhere. And the cat, even before I call his name, even if he's sound asleep, will sometimes come running before I call his name. It's quite incredible. But by doing these sorts of things, you can enhance your bond. And by training, you can also, cats are so good, they're like magicians. They mask illness, they hide it, right?
Yep.
But if we better understand our individual cat, know our cat, what's normal for our cat, by working with your cat all the time, by having a more intense relationship, then maybe you will better define when your cat is not feeling well. For dogs, a part of that answer is simply do what your dog loves to do. So if your dog loves squeaky toys, do that. Throw the squeaky toy a couple times a day. Take your dog for a walk. It turns out, according to one study that was done in one of those Scandinavian countries, they're all the same to me, I'm not sure which one, but in one of those Scandinavian countries, the most enriching thing you can do with your dog, take a walk. Let the dog sniff. So many of us are sometimes so intent, the dog has to be on our side all the time, or actually this side all the time, right? That's fine. I get that to some extent, but also let your dog be a dog, And sometimes we forget to do that because the bond is so intense and they are our little children. We forget that they are, after all, dogs and they like to do doggy things. So give them an opportunity to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very important. And Steve, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about veterinary visits. I know that you are among the fear-free certified professionals, and I wanted to talk a little bit about veterinary visits. And for those of us with I have a little min pin mix who's terrified of going to see the vet. And also let's talk about cats. And I know that the primary reason that cats don't see the vet on a regular basis is because it's such a stressful experience for both the cat and the cat parent. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Oh, I love you bringing that up. So thank you very much. Fear-free has changed the world because what we now know is that our animals don't need to be so afraid of vet visits. And we use terms very often called like fractious or bad to describe the animal that's there. They are simply terrified. And I believe many of my colleagues would agree, that these animals at times actually think they are going to die. Imagine. I mean, they're being dragged somewhere where they've had a prior experience that has not been positive from their perception, and they get more afraid every time. So fear doesn't, some people say, oh, they'll get better, they'll realize it's not so bad. It actually worsens over time unless you do something about it. And that's what Fear-Free actually began to do. And has done much more than that, as it has turned out. I mean, Fear-Free has helped animals in shelters. Dog trainers have now used the Fear-Free approach. Dog groomers have now used the Fear-Free approach. Entire practices, not only individual veterinarians and veterinary technicians and nurses. So what is the Fear-Free approach? It is beginning at the beginning. Even before you go to the veterinarian, for some animals, pre-medication is the right thing to do. And now we have the opportunity to do that. We have the products that really don't have severe side effects. The only side effect might be a bit sleepy. I would argue it is better to feel just a bit drowsy than feel like you're literally going to die, that you are that afraid, that terrified. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we know about behavior modification better than ever. I'm not going to go through the whole description now. I'd be happy to come back sometime to do that. But you can actually use behavior modification. Practice makes perfect to demonstrate to the cat that the carrier isn't so bad, the car ride isn't so bad, and the same for dogs, really. So when ultimately, and you're not going to believe this, ultimately when you land in the parking lot with your car and the dog looks up and realizes where he or she is, rather than hiding under the seat, which some dogs do, and begin to shake like that, and the hair flies everywhere. They actually want to pull you down the street to go to the veterinary clinic. That is actually a possibility. And for cats, the goal is for them to be content. Maybe they're not going to pull you down the street. Maybe they're not going to say, this is the best day of my life. However, you can make it better. Not only better, a lot better by using fear-free approaches, fearfreehappyhomes.com to learn more about it. And beside, on that website, if you have a dog that has thunderstorm anxiety, a cat that doesn't know what to do when people come over and dives under the bed, and you want to help those animals, lots of information on all sorts of issues that is written the right way by people you can trust. And a lot of those misconceptions, you asked about misconceptions earlier, are from people who write about all sorts of things or say all sorts of things online that just aren't true.
Right. Yeah. We
or are not beneficial to pets.
We live in the beautiful world of social media where any dummy with a beard and a microphone and a fancy headset gets to yell their opinion and everybody listens to it. I wonder who I'm talking about.
Exactly. Or you could look at all the dog trainers online now on TikTok, on Instagram in particular, that say, I'm going to solve this aggressive dog's problem. And they've got an e-collar or a shock collar on that dog, and they are making a difference. I mean, after all, if right now I had a shock collar around your neck, you'd respond a little differently than if
you're right.
$100 fell from the sky every time you talk to me. And if that happened, I would be on your show every single day, right? So positive reinforcement really does work.
Man, that is such a great example, because I just thought about, wow, yeah, $100 a line. That doesn't sound so bad. But I want to talk a little bit more about the relationship between vets and pet parents, because we talk about it a lot on this show. There's just sometimes a large communication gap between the vet parents and the veterinarians and the pet parents. So, what do you think the biggest gaps in communication are, and how can we close those gaps to have a better relationship with our veterinarian?
That's a super question. Right now, because of the information that is so readily available at any pet parent's fingertips, and because the bond is intensified. So if you ask any veterinary professional, at least any I've spoken to, that has been practicing for over 20 years, and say, "Oh, what has changed the most?" What you will hear from that veterinary professional, veterinarian, or technician is the bond is more intense today, and that is a good thing in of itself.
Yeah.
However, because of that, because of our passion for our pets, we want the best for our pets, and we'll go to get information. Unfortunately, some of that information may be disinformation or misinformation. Ultimately, people want to trust their veterinarian. And people say, well, millennials and zillennials, Generation Z, don't want to do that. Well, I disagree with that. I think when it comes down to it, especially more today than ever before, because they are their fur babies. They are their babies. They oftentimes don't have children with 2 legs. They have children only with 4 legs. So they really want the best for them. And the intent is good. And there's sometimes is this gap. So I think on the veterinary side, the veterinary professionals, and I think the profession has gotten a lot better at this, have to understand that there is information out there that maybe even they don't know about, or there is information out there that can be an adjunct, like if it's a .edu, a vet school, can be really good information. If it's about cats, from Every Cat Health Foundation, which I'd love to talk to you about, all of that can be really beneficial to gain additional knowledge. The problem is Susie's website may not have the best information about, I don't know, hyperthyroid disease in cats, as opposed to the Cornell Feline Health Center or Every Cat Health Foundation. So it is veterinarians understanding people want more, but also people understanding, or the hope is that they go to the right places to get more information. That's for starters, anyway. And also understanding today it's a partnership. It's not like, when I was a kid, wasn't that long ago, right? When I was a kid, I would, if my mom had a traffic ticket, and she only had one that I remember, but I had to get dressed up going to court. It wasn't my ticket. I was like 7 years old, but that's what people did, right?
Yeah.
And today people, go to court for those traffic tickets, and there seems to be no respect for the quote authority that there once was. And that includes doctors. Back in the day, I'm talking about personal physicians for us. Back in the day, if the doctor said the cure for whatever you have is to hit a hammer over your head, you would go home and hit a hammer over your head, So today we don't take, it's not only veterinary medicine, it's our society that's changed in that regard. So I hope that answers your question. But along the way, I did mention Every Cat Health Foundation, and I have, if you are ready for it, the most amazing news ever, 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 ever for cats.
Oh, I could use some amazing news right now.
Fantastic resource. And I think we're coming up on time, so we'll have to have you back to talk more about that, and also about Fear Free. But just before we go, what advice would you give to a pet parent who is just adopting a new pet, whether it's a dog or a cat?
Well, what I was going to say about the Every Cat Health Foundation, I will at least finish the sentence and say there will be a treatment. That's okay. There will be a treatment for feline hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. We're going to hear about a real treatment that works this year, approved by the Food and Drug Administration's Center for Veterinary Medicine through a fund, as it happens, that I began many years ago. We now understand this incredibly common disease in cats. It affects up to 1 in 8 cats, that many cats.
Wow.
And now, for the first time ever, We will have a treatment at North Carolina State University College of Veterinary Medicine this year. There will be in April a symposium. You can go to Raleigh, North Carolina, or just go to your computer and watch the event. If you're a veterinary professional, by the way, you do get CE credit for it. Now, to answer your question, I will, if I remember, which I don't, what the question was.
Just some general advice for a new pet parent. We had this question on the show last week, who is adopting their first pet, dog or cat.
Oh, I love the fact that they are. Do your homework first and talk to everyone in the family. So it's not just your decision. It's everyone's decision. Everyone is on board with the same individual animal that you're thinking of bringing into your home. And then do your homework about what that animal needs.
Excellent advice.
Well, Steve, it was great to have you on. You bring so much energy and passion to the pet space. So we're very thankful to have you both on the show and in the industry advocating for our furry friends.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
There we go.
It was my honor, the honor of my life. I will never, ever, ever have an opportunity in my entire life that equals this one. I could be knighted in the UK. I could be honored in many, many other ways, but nothing would equal this.
Those are very kind words, Steve. Thank you. Yeah. After that interview, Ron said that that's me in a few years. And I don't know if it was, I think he meant it as some type of slight, but it's a huge compliment. And I'm going to take that and run with it. It's a huge compliment. I'd love to be that passionate, energetic, and hilarious all at once.
The product of the week.
And now it is time for our product of the week. And Kristen, I've got something a little different. Something I don't think I've ever done this on this show. And I've got
why don't you go first then?
It's a small animal product. So this is appropriate for your bunnies, your guinea pigs, your gerbils. And it's just this little water and urine proof cat pad. They call it a cat pad, but it's a heating pad. It's great. It's a 12-inch dish, so it's a personal size pizza. This is perfect if you keep your small animals in a place that gets a little cold. I know somebody who kept a bunny. And the bunny's main room, where had its litter and its bed, and had to do its lockup time, was a bathroom, which is bunnies notorious for having accidents in the house, and the tile gets cold, so they had built up a little blanket nest for the bunny to be nice and warm. But this is a great alternative. You plug it right into the wall. It's got temperature control. I just think it's like a nice little thing for you to do. I think we gloss over small animals a lot, both as people and on the show, and tend to think, they have everything that they need. But if you are a crazed small pet parent who's like, I need to get something to help my little creature out through the winter, I think this is a great little thing. It's going to run you back about $20. They have a bigger size available too, in case you've got one of those really big hairs. It comes in a couple of little different colors, all cute little things. But I think it's a great little product to get for your tiny little pet partner.
That is a great idea. I love that. Yeah, and we need to feature more things like that for small animals too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my product this week it's called a bark bowl. Now, these are brand new, and I'll tell you what they look like. They look like Lunchables from the grocery store, but I assure you they're much healthier, and the bowls are made with sustainable materials. So bark bowls were created for dogs on the go. So maybe if you're traveling with your dog, or you're going on a hike and you're going to be gone for a while and your dog's going to need to eat, the bark bowl is a little package that you peel off the top, and it's got kibble on like the left side, and then it has a little cup that you peel off the top, and it's a wet topper for the dry kibble. And they're made with premium ingredients. Like I said, eco-friendly packaging. It says that these are compostable bowls, and says travel ready dog food. And I think this is great for, whenever I travel with Tulip, I bring a Ziploc bag of her treats. Then I've got her fresh pet that I'm feeding her now in a cooler, and it's kind of a lot. So these are great little just on the go little meals. And although I would think, now that I'm thinking about this, I love the idea, but it's not always the greatest idea to shift your pet's diet suddenly. So maybe before you use the bark bowls on a trip or a hike, maybe you use one to kind of get your dog used to this particular, food. But I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like a cup of noodle for your dog.
Yeah.
But without the styrofoam waste, and probably much healthier than cup of noodle.
Exactly.
Though I've got nothing against cup of noodle. Got me through some hard times. Hard times. No, but that's I like the idea for like a hike too, as like a little snack.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a longer hike, burning a lot of calories.
Yep.
If you're hungry, they're hungry. And I'm always hungry.
Get you some bark bowls.
Yeah, get me a bark bowl. Warm it up in the microwave. I'm sure everybody in the office would appreciate that odor emanating from the big break room.
Q&As.
Okay, Kristen, it's time. It's time for our favorite part of the show. That's right. We're going to answer 2 questions from our wonderful audience. So I know what you're thinking. You're listening to the show and you're saying, I've got a burning question for Chris and Kristen. How do I get my question answered? And it's quite easy. You're going to head on over to petsadlife.org/podcast. That's petsadlife.org/podcast. Scroll on down to the bottom of that page. You're going to see a form to submit your question. Or alternatively, if you're feeling as brave as Scrim, the rebel dog, you can record a voice memo and send your question that way, and we'll play it live on these airwaves. But
we've only had a couple of those voice memos, so
we've only had a couple. I know some of my friends sent in some like fantasy football questions via voice memos. Don't do that, guys. Come on.
Does it have to be a pet question?
It's got. I mean, we've had some that are only roughly pet related, but let's avoid the fantasy football questions. Plus, you don't want my advice. I came in like second to last this year. Why are you asking me those questions? So without further ado, Kristen, I got a question here for you.
Okay.
And this question comes from Mike in Denver. Mike, thank you for your question. He asks, I'm considering getting a dog, but I'm torn between adopting from a shelter or buying from a breeder. In general, do adopted dogs have more health or behavior challenges compared to dogs from reputable breeders? It's a great question, Mike.
Yeah, it is a really great question. And I'll start off by just saying that I tend to be a little bit biased on the adoption side just because I started my career in this industry working for an animal shelter. So, and I think adopted dogs are great dogs, but the reality is that it depends on a lot of things, Mike. So your family makeup, is there before you get and before you adopt or purchase a dog, you should be thinking about what kind of dog is going to fit best with your family's lifestyle. Are you guys super active, or are you kind of, chill, more couch potato kind of family? And you really should kind of consider a few different types of dogs, not only size, but also breed types or breed groups. And if you're not sure, you can talk to friends and family. And then once you kind of narrow down the idea of what type of dog you're looking for, or the type of breed or breed mix, then that's when you're kind of faced with, well, which should I do? Now, animal shelters typically have dogs that are, were surrendered for a variety of reasons. And that could be problems that, a behavior problem that the dog may have, or it could be just that the family could no longer care for the pet. So if you do go the shelter route, then you want to do as much research as possible on those available dogs, and talk to the shelter workers, the volunteers, because they know those animals best. Sometimes they have background information, sometimes they don't. So it's a little bit of a, you're not going to have a lot of information in most cases. On the other hand, if you think that, say, a Cocker Spaniel is going to be the best dog for your family, then I would look into reputable breeders. And it's really ultimately going to be a decision that you make for yourself. It's going to be a lot less expensive to go the animal shelter route. And also, typically, shelter or rescue dogs, the adoption fee includes a certain number of, medical things like vaccinations, spaying and neutering, microchip. So it's a bit of an economic decision too. So lots of things to think about, Mike. We're sorry I don't have a real straightforward answer for you, but in terms of health and behavior challenges, I'd have to say that if you go the shelter route, that's there's more potential, especially if it's an adult dog, that there could be behavior challenges, but that doesn't mean you can't work through them. So
yeah, and I would add that on the other end of it, for health, there are some purebred breeds of dog that they just have health issues. Like if you're concerned about health, don't get a French bulldog. They're going to have one issue. It could be stomach, it could be skin, it could be worse than that. But I could almost guarantee it. I've never met a French bulldog who didn't rack up the vet fees. So do your research on that too, because there's a big difference between a purebred golden retriever who will probably be healthy as a clam until the day that they cross the rainbow bridge, and then there's the other side of things where some of these dogs really have some issues, and if health is your primary concern, if your primary concern is I want to take this animal to the vet as little as possible, super mutts are the way to go. Like a very heavy mix of all the breeds. You're going to have a very unique looking dog. They're going to get sick less often. They're going to have less dietary restrictions on average. And it's not a guarantee. We're speaking in macro data here.
Sure. Generalities.
But yeah, what Kristen said about behavior is probably true. They're in the only type of dog I would say from a shelter where you're going to have a good chance of having no behavioral issues is an older animal where their caretaker had passed. And
good point.
There was nobody left to take care of the dog, and you could be that dog's guardian angel for the rest of their life. But chances are
that's right.
You're going to have to pay attention to a lot of training if you're adopting a dog from a shelter.
Yes, but let us know what you decide, Mike.
Yeah, get in the comments. I want to follow this story.
All right, Chris, I've got a story for you. Or not a story. I've got a question for you. We did stories today. Let's see. This one is from Emily in Chicago. And Emily says, my 4-year-old wants a pet, and we're thinking about starting with fish. What's the best beginner-friendly fish for young kids? And what should we know before setting up a tank?
That's a great question. And a little fun aside, because I love telling this story. My first pet, my parents did the same thing when I was maybe a little older than that, but they got, we had cats around for forever, but they got me a fish tank that was mine. And it's harder to take care of than you'd think. And of course, we had some fish die. So we were at the pet store one day and picking out new fish for me to take another swing at this stuff. And this man comes in with his little tiny puppy and he's shopping around. And I'm like a 5-year-old. And I say to this man, I hope you have better luck with your puppy than I do with my fish.
Oh my gosh.
I love telling that story.
That's a great story.
This is a great question because it's a typical route when you think, low maintenance, low impact animal, but that's not necessarily true. So my first thing is, if you are going to get your 4-year-old a fish, prepare for that to become your fish real quick. Real quick. My second piece of advice is going to sound counterintuitive, but it is absolutely true. Get the biggest tank that you could fit in the space that you're allocating for this fish, because a larger, understocked tank is much easier to maintain. More fish equals more waste, equals more algae, equals more cleaning, equals more water care. So like a 10-galloner with like maybe 6 same-sex guppies is a great way to go about it. Same sex means you're not going to end up with babies, that tank,
Right.
because if there is a lot of room and you have male and female, you're going to end up with babies, but maybe that's exciting. Maybe that's something you want, so you could go that route, but you're not going to have to clean the tank as often. Things like guppies or neons or tetra, they're really easy to take care of, and they're nice to look at. They're not going to get so big that you're going to have to cull or remove some of the fish. And you're just going to have an easier time maintaining it. And now, if that's not possible, if you were thinking more along the lines of like fish bowl, a single beta is a good way to go. Beta don't play well with other fish, so don't mix them up in a big tank. And they could do well in smaller environments. But a fish bowl or small tank means removing the fish and cleaning often, because you're not going to have filtration or anything like that. And a 4-year-old is not going to be able to clean a tank properly. What you're teaching the 4-year-old is a recurring chore, right? And it's feed the fish every other day, whatever the feeding schedule ends up becoming. That's the lesson you're going to be teaching them, because they're not going to be capable of doing the more difficult parts, maybe until they're like 8, 9, 10, because it involves carefully removing the fish, setting them aside, turning off machinery, scrubbing and cleaning. And unless your 4-year-old is a cleaning savant, that's going to be your job. So that's my opinion on that. I know I talked about beginner fish a lot, but I think it's fun as a kid to get a fish, because it feels like yours. It feels like your first adult responsibility and something you could handle.
Exactly.
But yeah, adults are going to be doing a lot behind the scenes there.
Good luck, Emily.
Yeah, and Kristen, it's the end of our show. Another one bites the dust.
Man, time flies. I was going to say time flies when you're having fun, but
I mean, we could be having fun. We could have fun after this too. There's no stop to the fun. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, or if you're listening to this the next day, the Wednesday, if you're listening to this on Thursday, why did you wait so long? That hurts. We should be must listen audio, podcast, video, drama. You won't be able to see my cool flowery shirt unless you're getting this on YouTube or Dog TV.
That's
so
right.
Consider that. It's really just the collar, because it's still cold and I'm wearing a sweater. But hey, the good news is we're going to be back next Tuesday, and we're going to have more amazing guests, more great stories. We're going to be talking about some awesome products. You can't miss it, right, Kristen? You just can't.
That's right. Yeah. So in the meantime, you guys just sit, stay, and we'll see you next week.
It was there. Sit, stay.
That was it. Sit, stay.
I like that.
Yeah,
Stay.
stay. We'll see you next week.
Don't move.
Drop it. Drop it.
Drop it. No, don't drop it. No, only if their hands on the next button. Drop it down.
Pets Add Life, your guide to the latest in pet trends, products, and the joy of the human-animal bond, with Kristen Levine and Chris Bonifati, powered by the American Pet Products Association and Dog TV.